Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be talking today about Newcastle United's pre-season so far, what we've had, what we've learned, and what's to come as well. I think tonight the big game against Glasgow Rangers will put Newcastle in good stead for the trip to the United States. But the big one I know a lot of you are asking about, talking about, it's got to be the transfers, where Newcastle are with that. But we'll come on to that later. Quick look back on Gateshead at the weekend. I think Eddie Howe really looking at that patched up team. I think he actually beat Alan Pardew's record for getting left backs on the pitch. I remember a famous game down at Southampton when he put 3 left backs on the field and Newcastle were hammered 4-0, I think it was. I think he had Paul Dummett, David Santon and Macedo Hedera on the pitch at the same time, and it didn't go well. But it went a little bit better at Gateshead, albeit a pre-season friendly. He managed to, get a victory in a very tough game. Let's not forget, I don't really look at Gateshead as a non-league team because it is a very professional setup with Mike Williamson and Rob Elliott there, a wealth of experience. It's a massively professional setup. They train well, they've got the tactics right, they play good football. And Newcastle were nearly on the end of a really negative result, 2-0 down at half-time. But Eddie Howe, to his credit, whatever he said, whatever he did in the dressing room at half-time, turned it round with it. Let's be honest, a scratch team. There's a lot of left-backs on there. A couple of players who, for me, don't have a future at the club. But really, second half, the team that finished was pretty much an under-21 side. So they did very well down there, and I think, Alan Saint-Maximin was a standout performer for me. Elliot Anderson did very well. Those two hold the team back into the game at 2-2, and then Jay Turner-Cook came off the bench and got the winner. So that was Gateshead. I thought did very well to turn that round. Given the circumstance at half time, the weather, there was all kinds of things going off, and really Newcastle have only been in training a few days, so it was always going to be pre-season cliche alert. It was always going to be a bit rusty going into it. So that was Gateshead. Afterwards, we spoke to Eddie Howe. The first time the press have had a chance to speak to him this summer. I think there was probably only like 1 or 2 questions about Gateshead. There was always going to be. And then it was straight into transfers. And Eddie Howe, to be fair, he answered pretty much every question he could to the best of his ability, to the best of his knowledge. But for me, what did I take away from what he said? Well, for me, I sensed a bit of frustration just watching him answer the first few questions. And I actually asked him, have you felt frustrated in this summer? Despite getting Sandro Tonelli, a fantastic signing through the door, has there been any elements of frustration? And he said, yeah, there has actually, and that's the way he looked at it. But I don't think that was him being negative. I just think it was him knowing that Newcastle, the truth is Newcastle had probably been close to a couple of deals, and then the final sort of segment of a transfer, it just hasn't got over the line. That was the impression that I got from Eddie Howe on Saturday. So he admitted being frustrated. The other key thing I took away from it was he specified that he looks at it as a coach. So he looks at it as getting players back on the grass and wanting to work with them. And if he can't do that, then he's going to be judged on results later in the season. So the quicker he can get them through the door and working with them, the better. And at the minute, it has been frustrating for Newcastle. The good thing is here, and there's obviously going to be negativity around in football, but the good thing for me here is that Newcastle are trying. They're trying to get deals done. In the past, there's been times where Newcastle just have almost dismissed the transfer window, and you just couldn't take them seriously. You can't take them seriously now because they've shown in the Tonelli deal alone, this window, they've shown that they've got top targets. They're prepared to go and get them. They're prepared to pay the money if they have to. And the big thing was Dan Ashworth and Steve Nixon flying over to Milan and just getting it over the line and getting it done. And I believe that there's probably been a couple of other transfers where they've been close, but they just haven't been able to get it done and dusted. So there's a lot to kind of process in all that. Do I think Newcastle will get deals done? I think they've got to. It's not a case of, well, they've got to get them done, because this squad is a talented one. If you took away the other three competitions and said this squad will be playing the 30 games in the Premier League and that's all we've got to focus on, then I think they'd have a great season and they'd probably finish in the top 4 or 5 and get in the Champions League again. But it doesn't work like that. They've got the domestic cup competitions and they've got the Champions League, and it could be a minimum 46 game season. That is a lot of matches, and it's not even a case of it's a lot of matches. It's a case of some of these runs of games, 3 games in a week. It's tough. We've seen it before when Newcastle in Europe last time. They were on the knees basically by the weekend Premier League game. They nearly got relegated in 2012 under Alan Pardew, 2012-13, sorry. And that was because of those Europa League games. It was the price of success. They were almost punished for the success in Europe on the domestic front. And, you know, just stayed up on the second last game of the season at Queen's Park Rangers then. So we don't want another season like that. So it's got to be getting players through the door. And if you look back at the history books in Newcastle, when they've got into Europe, it's always been down to that transfer window. So I've just mentioned there 2012, they only signed Vernon and Anita, and they went from 5th to 4th bottom. And then I think 2002, 2003, I think they only signed Lee Bowyer that summer, and then they struggled again. So this, for me, I mean, that one ended up with Sir Bobby Robson leaving the club. So this, for me, it's a crucial window, and past mistakes. I think there's still people at the club who were involved in both of them campaigns. So they know that this is really going to be a crucial period going into it. What does Eddie Howe need to make this squad better? That's a really good question. I mean, he didn't speak specific positions. He said, actually, I don't want to disrespect some of the players I've got on board, because he knows that he could have to rely on these players. So it's no good him saying, well, we need a new left back or we need a new right back. It's a case of he knows the areas that Newcastle needs to improve on, but it's all across the board. It's just that little extra layer of backup. And I think you're going to be looking at the fullbacks. I mean, he can't say it, but you're going to be looking at potentially bringing a new fullback, even though we started this video talking about having too many left backs. I also said some of these players aren't going to be at the club long term. So he's going to need something there. He's going to need another attacker, in my opinion, just to give Newcastle that extra dimension. He's probably going to need another centre-half, if we're being honest. And that's where it's going to get interesting, because you've got a lot of players who've been at the club a long time. Jamal Lascelles has been here a while. Fabian Schär had a brilliant season last year. I would expect him to continue. But Newcastle continually be linked with right-sided centre-halves. So there's a lot to think about from that point of view. But 2 or 3 positions is where Newcastle probably need to pick up. They fly the United States to a training camp in Atlanta after tonight's game at Rangers. So that's going to be the start of a trip which is going to be hectic. Eddie Howe's already touched on it. He said that it's going to be intense, and it will be, because compared to last year in Austria, the tranquility and the sort of calmness of a country like Austria was fantastic for Newcastle. They got all the work done. This is going to be different. This is going to be a lot of fans from the States, which is great. They're going to get to see Newcastle play, but it's going to be in 3 different venues. It's going to be a lot of flights. It's going to be loud. It's going to be a really good trip, I would imagine. But I think for Eddie Howe, that time on the training pitch might get compromised a little bit with other events, and I think that's what he's probably concerned about. Hence him saying it's going to be intense. I think he knows it's going to be tough. So they will enjoy it, but it's going to be different to Austria last season, and I think that's worth considering. And going into that trip, games in Philadelphia against Aston Villa, against Chelsea in Atlanta, which is going to be a huge game at the Mercedes-Benz Arena, and then another game to finish off against Brighton Hove Albion in New Jersey at the Red Bull Arena, another impressive venue, and it's going to be plenty of Newcastle fans getting their opportunity to see the club. So it's really important from a club point of view to have that brand awareness continuing to spread around America, because Newcastle aren't there yet in terms of being that global brand that they want to be. So it's all these little things coming together. But for Eddie Howe, he'll be focused on training. I'm sure he'll get some good work done over there. But I think really this is going to be a different trip to the Austria one. But we've got Rangers tonight first. Stay tuned on here because there'll be videos being pushed up from tonight at Ibrox. And obviously on Chronicle Live, where there's a whole range of options now, podcasts, videos, newsletters. It's all on there. Take a look. Stick with us for the pre-season, and we'll be in touch again after tonight's game against Rangers.